to the Pitch of Discontent. Owen back again for a very special bonus episode. As you can probably tell, we don't have a guest for this week's episode. However, thought this would be a good occasion to run through some of my favorite records from 2025. So that's why this episode is the best of 2025 so far, because we don't know what else is coming. I mean, the world could end, maybe, mercifully, but there's still probably going to be some records that sneak in towards the end of the year. But I have been cataloging a lot of records as part of the show, as watchers and listeners will know. So I've collated a top 10 of releases that I've been replaying, going back to, fucking with, and that's the list that I'm going to run through for you. Now, if you're a member of our Patreon, and please, you should be, if you want to help support the show, if you want to get extra content, extra videos, extra music recommendations, please join the Patreon, patreon.com/tpdpod. I'll have a plug for that later in the episode. But if you're a part of the Patreon, some of these records will already be familiar to you as they formed part of my Q1 recap, which came out in early April, if I'm not mistaken. So some of these will be familiar to you. Also, if you're a regular watcher and listener of the podcast, a lot of these were our feature albums that we had at the end of our release roundup episodes. So we've definitely talked about these records before. So a lot of them will be familiar to you. However, there are some new inclusions, some new finds, some rarities, some things in there that I think people should be listening to that I may have missed or that I may have not talked about in enough detail. So let's just get into it. We can get into this roundup. I'll talk about all of the records that I'm fucking with in 2025 so far. Let's go. So, first up, I'm going to talk about the debut EP from Naarm/Melbourne Bolt Down Bruises Death Tax. I fucking love this EP. I think this band is so sick. The EP is called Turn to Dust. It dropped in mid-February through ba-beeeee God Records. Shout out to Louis. This is 5 tracks of slow, brutal, down-tuned death that crushes you into the earth and scorches your remains. Hell fucking yeah. I would say that you should picture like a bulldozer of percussion that just like ceaselessly, rhythmically bludgeons you. If you're familiar with death metal luminaries like Bolt Thrower, this is the type of band for you. It's heavy, it's aggressive, it's relentless, but they also add like a little bit of like some beatdown grooves and a little bit of like mosh stylings to the equation. So it's not completely metal, a little bit of hardcore influence in there, but it's still very riffy, very heavy, just like a fucking bulldozer. It rocks. I am seeing them live for the first time next month, which I'm very excited about because I must pay the tax. So I'm very excited, but I've been fucking with this EP a lot, and I think you should too. Let's have a listen to a track. This is Death Tax, title track, Turn to Dust. Next up, we're going to keep things focused on Naarm, keep things on Melbourne. This is another EP inclusion. This is Ends in Tragedy, Angel Wings in a Violent Sky. This band is one of the bright spots in Naarm's thriving kind of metalcore revival scene. They've got a very big mid-2000s metalcore vibe, which longtime watchers and listeners of the show will know that that is 110% my shit. This is a 3-track EP with 2 new songs and then a re-release of a 2024 single that they put out called Ecstasy 96. The 3 tracks, all bang, sounds fucking sick. If you fuck with any of the metalcore revival stuff that's coming out through the Coming Strife or the Fire label, you'll want to hear this. This is definitely going to be up your alley. This band is really on the up. They've got some big support slots. They've done a couple of tours, played a couple of shows interstate, I believe. And from what I've seen, their live show is fucking incredible. Uh, I am definitely following this band, very eager to see what they put out next. But I think this 3-track is fucking killer. Let's have a listen to a track. This is Ends in Tragedy, Forgiveness. All right, next up. This one was a late find. I came to this record a couple of months after it was released, but it soon became one of my favorite records of this year. And I've definitely gone back to this a bunch and found a deeper appreciation for this record than I had on first listening, which was still an incredible listen. So, this is the second album from the Tubs. It's called Cotton Crown. They're like a UK jangle-pop indie kind of group, I would say. The record came out in early March. This one is super interesting. So, frontman and vocalist Owen Williams, great name, originally conceived of the material for this record as part of a novel that he was writing, which was inspired by the suicide of his mother, who was a folk singer and writer called Charlotte Greig. And I learned this information from reading a fantastic Pitchfork review of the record. So if you're interested, go seek that out. It's really, really great. But basically, it describes how Owen was trying to get that picked up as a literary pitch for a publisher to help publish his novel, which never happened. So then he then kind of turned all of the material that he put together for that novel into music. And there's a quote here in the review where Owen says, "There's a special kind of humiliation in failing to hawk your big tragedy." Now, I think that that makes for quite a rich musical experience because there is a lot of deep emotions on this record, but you wouldn't really know it because most of the instrumentals are kind of swift and upbeat, and the music is definitely captivating in a very kind of fun and melodic and bright, summery kind of way. But then the lyrical intention and a lot of the thematic resonance is quite dark and quite poignant. So there's an interesting kind of tension and contrast going on the record, which I quite enjoy because we like sad music that sounds upbeat. Okay. He then Owen decided to repurpose a little bit of that novel that nobody wanted, turn that into Cotton Crown, and I think this record fucking rocks. I think the songs are incredibly strong. I just think it's a really deliriously catchy record, sorrowful, self-deprecating. There's hooks all over this thing that will make you laugh and they'll make you cry and make you sing along. It's just really, really great alternative, indie, post-punky, jangle pop sort of stuff. All over that spectrum, but it fucking rocks. So we're gonna listen to a track. This is the Tubs, One More Day.
Coffin beating in my arms. One more day, you could give me one more day. One more day, you can love me one more day. One more day, you could give me one more day. One more day, you can love me one more day. I was stalking through the morning light and I thought
All right, so next up, we have a very early contender for my album of the year. I'm talking about Deafheaven, Lonely People with Power. This is one of our feature albums. We talked about it on episode 225, so you can go back to the Patreon and listen to that one. Look, Deafheaven are a curious band in heavy music because this is their sixth full-length album, their Roadrunner debut, but I think only now have they managed to completely synthesize their entire kind of catalog into one record. Um, to me, the singles from this record were kind of hinting a return to the sound on 2015's New Bermuda, which is my favorite Deafheaven record, and it was the immediate follow up to 2013's Sunbather, which was their huge breakout record. But what makes Lonely People with Power even more special, I think, is not only does it kind of throw it back to that raw intensity and that kind of very visceral black gaze kind of sound, it's folding in all of the experimentation and all of the extra kind of influences and sonic directions that they explored on subsequent records, particularly like 2021's Infinite Granite, which was a very kind of soft, somber, almost twinkly and pretty kind of record. Lonely People with Power is all the better for it because it's dark, it's confronting, it's aggressive, but it's also gorgeous. And it really kind of showcases their ability to be explosive and to be, you know, very intense, but to also kind of pull things back and allow more somber, interesting, darker textures suffuse through their music. Um, so it kind of, I don't know, doesn't completely sand off all of their sonic edges, but allows for a little bit of that shimmer and a little bit of that gloss to kind of come through at just the right moment. I've got a quote from frontman George Clark, who said this in a track by track feature for Flood magazine, where he talks about what the title is referring to and kind of what the overall point of the record is. So George says, quote, "The record has to do with the way that men relate to one another and how shortcomings in, say, a father, an uncle, or a teacher's perspective come to shape your own worldview. Overall, that's the idea of Deafheaven, to recognize that the personal is often also the universal," which I think is incredibly interesting and a really fascinating lens through which to analyze our current moment because, let's face it, a lot of lonely people with power. But I fucking love this record. I think it is their most expansive, their most interesting, and I keep coming back to it and finding new things to discover. So I really suggest you check it out. I'm going to play you my favorite track from the record. This is Deafheaven, Body Behavior. All right, so now that we're done recapping some of the records that we already touched on in my Q1 recap, we now are moving on to some later releases and stuff that I want to include in this 2025 best list so far. So, first up, we have Balmora with Prologue. This is a 3-track EP, came out in early April. If you're a regular watcher, listener, the name Balmora should be very familiar to you. They're probably the preeminent metalcore revivalist group operating right now. I talked about their 2024 EP, which was called Six Packs Etched in Blood. That was a split with the now defunct Since My Beloved. That was one of my favorite releases of that year. They also had a contribution to a compilation called One Scene Unity. They had a track on that comp called Bloodlord, which is also part of this Prologue EP. Very similar to the Ends in Tragedy Angel Wings EP that I mentioned earlier. These guys are from Connecticut. They are incredible metalcore revivalists. This one dropped through Days and Ephira. The singer of Balmora, Senti, runs the Ephira label. So he's not only in the preeminent metalcore revivalist band, but runs the preeminent metalcore revival label. And this one is pitched as, what if the Black Dahlia murder sounded like they had irate mosh parts? So if that's giving you any kind of indication of what to be prepared for here, that should do it for you. I was watching a video earlier this week of the band playing the Hellfest Ephira crossover fest. Crazy scenes, insane stage dives, multiple people on stage pulling the mic off Senti and singing the words. These guys have got a crazy underground swell behind them, and they're just fucking great. Throwing it back to that classic kind of metalcore sound before it got overly trendy, before it got pulled in various different directions. This is real deal shit. Hardcore kids playing metalcore, and it fucking rocks. They're a band to watch for me. I anticipate that this prologue release is probably leading to their debut LP or debut album, perhaps later this year, maybe 2026. Who knows? But if I don't get that debut full length, I'm going to spin kick myself into oblivion. Okay? I'll do it. I will fucking do it. I'm going to play you a track. This is Balmora. The day I died, I heard no singing. Okay, next record to talk about is the Callous Daoboys, I Don't Want to See You in Heaven. Now, this is another early contender for my album of the year. The record came out in mid May. It was our feature album on episode 233. Once again, you can jump on the Patreon and check that out. But this is hands down the record that I have listened to the most for 2025. I am in constant awe of the sheer audacity that it takes to make music this crazy, this stark, this diverse, this cohesive in execution. I love this record. And this is the album that I've been waiting for the Daoboys to make for years. I think it's fantastic. It's heavy, it's poppy, it's weird, it's super intricate in a narrative way. I'm a huge sucker for like a heady concept album. And I know that frontman Carson Pace, quote, hates concept albums and likes to think of this as more of a functioning meta narrative. And look, that's completely fine. That's his prerogative to do so. But I will say that as a narrative conceit, immortalizing yourself in this way through your own art is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And being able to understand the relationship between an author and the text, and in this case, the music and your audience, and to be aware and perceive your own legacy in this way, both from the outside and from the inside, and collapse that division. Yeah, incredible. I'm in awe of it. I think this record fucking rocks. There are so many great songs on here. So many holy shit, what the fuck did they just do moments. No one is being this daring when it comes to this kind of heavy music. No one is making it this fun, and no one is doing it on this level. So I just think the Daoboys absolutely fucking crushed it. And every time I listen to this record, I find a new song and a new passage that blows my mind and makes me fall in love with this band all over again. So I'm going to play you a track. This is the Callous Daoboys, Idiot Temptation Force.
This stage is turning black. I wish I had a bad like your name. Someone to track, zombies of the kinds. But every consent keeps on trending. I hope to be crowded soon. She said it sounds like fucking asphalt. I thought the struggle was so whatever I just taken from.
All right, I have another album of the year contender. I mean, let's face it, most of these are album of the year contenders. That's why they're in the best of 2025 list, but I digress. This next record is Puffer with Street Hassle. This one came out in mid-June, so it's only a couple of weeks old. This was another feature album on the pod. You can check that out on episode 237. I have been a massive fan of Puffer since I came across their Live and Die in the City demo in 2022. I wrote about it in the Picture Discontent newsletter before we even had the podcast, talking about how it was some of the most infectious, no frills, dive bar hardcore punk that I'd ever heard, full of earworms, but also the type of music that I could picture myself getting shivved to. And with every subsequent release, the band have improved, have sharpened the blade, so to speak. And this is just incredible Montreal oi punk that's catchy and full of energy and full of attitude and swagger, but doesn't dilute itself for any kind of trends or any kind of frills. There are no frills, zero frills. The band's debut full length, Street Hassle, was self produced by the band and then mastered by Jonah Falco, who's the drummer of Fucked Up and also a kind of UK punk producer, trendsetter. He wrote this incredible review or bio of the record on their Bandcamp page. I won't read the whole thing, but he described this record as loud, brash, and unrelenting. You'll go deaf before you get bored of it. And I second that sentiment. I think Jonah is on the money. I fucking love this band. I think they're incredible. I think the Montreal oi punk scene is the best in the world right now, turning out band after band after band. And to see Puffer kind of go from their demo to the first record is kind of a cool thing to get in on the ground floor and watch a band develop in that way. So, yeah, I fucking love this record. I think you should love this record. I'm going to play you a track. This is Puffer, Give Me the Bone. Okay, next up we have another EP for this list, and this is a completely new find. Haven't featured this on the podcast at all. This is the band My Point of View, and the EP is titled This Is My First Heist. Now, this is a fantastic EP, very underrated emo outfit hailing from Denton, Texas. I was tipped off to this one by music writer and Pitchfork Lightning Rod Ian Cohen. He featured this in a newsletter piece talking about 2025's best emo acts. I'd never heard of this band, and I was like, okay, I'll buy it. This thing rocks. It's at times heavy with kind of angular post hardcore riffs and a bit of math rock kind of craziness, while also being very twinkly and pretty and endearing in a very emo way, especially with vocalist Frida Valenzuela's airy, clean vocals. I would say that this is a standout kind of Scrams release for me for this year, which is tough competition because there's been a lot of really, really good releases in the first half of this year. This is definitely one that people should be talking about, and I haven't seen enough people putting this EP on. So we got to do the due diligence, got to put some respect on my point of view. I'm going to play you a track. This is My Point of View Redeemer. All right. Final EP for my best of 2025 so far list comes from the band Upon Stone. EP is called End Time Lightning. They're a US death metal outfit. They dropped a surprise 3-track EP at the very end of June, literally squeaking into this list right on the buzzer. This EP features 2 new songs and then a Manowar cover at the very end, which is a lot of fun. The band put out their debut LP in 2024 through Century Media called Dead Mother Moon. I thought that record was unreal and had really kind of honed in on the band's late 90s, particularly Gothenburg Melodeath influences, thinking In Flames, At the Gates, Dark Tranquility, classics. You know the sound. But they've got a little bit more aggression And I think the leads and the melodies are just a little bit sharper and catchier. However, this new material on End Time Lightning kind of takes that progression a step further. I find this new material to be a little bit darker and catchier again, and really kind of putting a stamp on what a contemporary American melodeath sound would be. I think these bands are, sorry, I think this band is one of the best to do that. And I think End Time Lightning is an incredible EP. I can't believe they just surprise dropped it and just went, here you go. I hope they're working on a new LP because I think that's going to fucking rip. But as a while you wait kind of teaser, this is pretty good too. Two new songs are fucking fantastic. I'm going to play you one of those right now. This is Pond Stone, Autumn, Evermore. All right, we have pushed through this list to our final LP, and this is the 10th album, or release rather, that I'm featuring on my Best of 2025 so far list. This one was our most recent feature album. You can go check that out on the main show. It's episode 239. This is the second album from Aotearoa New Zealand quartet Ringlets. The record is called The Lord is My German Shepherd, Time for Walkies. This is a glorious record. It's out now through Flying Nun Records and Leather Jacket Records. Best album title of 2025, hands down, will not be beaten. This record rocks. It is the embodiment of unfettered artistic expression. It's resolutely self assured, an effortless blend of indie rock, post hardcore, folk, whatever the band's feeling at the current moment. It just suffuses confidence and has this innate knack for storytelling that gently kind of pulls you in. And once you're in there, it will not let you go. Every song on the record is different, but captivating in its own way. And then as a cohesive whole, the whole record feels like reading someone's diary and being soundtracked by one of the best bands on the planet. It's just an incredibly solid record and one of the most interesting rock records that I've heard all year. I think singles have been incredibly strong and unique in their own way, but I think listening to the whole record from front to back is really an experience. One of those, put it on and kind of just let it flow over you type records. I can't wait for people to listen to this, and if you haven't, I highly recommend that you do. I'm going to play you one of the singles from this record as our final track for the Best of 2025 so far list. This is Ringlets, Street Massage.
An act of love like no other. Think of time as you shovel down the morsels. All that's been and all they'll give you if you're forceful. Some get it right.
And that's it. Thank you for rocking with me. That is the end of my Best of 2025 so far list. But if you would like some more records, I highly recommend that you join the TPD Patreon, patreon.com/TPDpod. I'm going to be putting up my Q2 recap over there. That's got 10 more records. I'm going to be playing more tracks. I'm going to be showing off more sick records from 2025. I've also got my Q1 recap over there as well. Another 10 records, some of them which I've already spoken about on this episode, but there'll be more in there as well. So if you want to find out about all the sick shit that's been dropping this year, I highly recommend you go over to the Patreon, get that first tier sub, and you can go through, watch those episodes, and find some cool new music. However, I also want to know, if you've made it to the end of this episode, thank you, love you, but what are you listening to? What's your favorite record of 2025? Drop it in the comments, give this a like, share it around, send it to someone who's music taste is kind of shit, needs a little bit of a zhuzh, send it to them and be like, hey, you should listen to these records. These are great. Owen knows what he's talking about because I do. I do know what I'm talking about. But no, seriously, tell me what you're listening to. Tell me what you think is the best record of 2025. I want new finds. I want new recommendations. I want to listen to what you've been listening to. So send it through to me and yeah, sign up for the Patreon. All right. Thank you very, very much. We'll be back with the roundup next week. But until then, I'll catch you later. Hello, Owen popping in to say, please sign up for the TPD Patreon. This is what helps us keep the lights on and keep the show going. The link is at the bottom of your screen right now, patreon.com/tpdpod. All of our patrons get exclusive access to Side B of our roundup episodes, so you get a few extra tracks, as well as our feature album discussion and the full show experience. Our patrons also get exclusive access to behind the scenes, off the cuff chit chat from all of our guest episodes. But the patrons are the ones who make all of this happen. For as little as $5 a month, you can sign up to the TPD Patreon, and it really helps us out, really helps us keep the show going. So shout out to all of our patrons, shout out to our executive producer patrons. You're the real ones. And yeah, thank you so much for watching the show.